Hello, it's Jim Hutchins for the Jerusalem Connection Spot Report for this week. Well, the president has been faithful to his word. He's done what he said he would do. And that is make Jerusalem, declare Jerusalem, as far as the United States is concerned, to be the capital of Israel, and that the movement of the embassy, our U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv, will be in the process of being brought to Jerusalem. It's caused quite a stir. A lot of people supported it. Most have not. The UN, the Europeans, the Muslims, the media, most have not. The Arabs have not. But there are a number of significant voices that have. Some 250 rabbis have signed a letter to the president saying that he has fulfilled prophecy in doing this, what he's done with regard to Jerusalem. Others have written very promising response. Yoram Ettinger is a former ambassador from Israel to the U.S. He was a personal friend of my late wife, Pat, and myself. He says this: relocating the U.S. Embassy of Jerusalem underscores the resurrection and the U.S. independent unilateral, that is, rather than multinational, action. It distinguishes the U.S. President, Congress, and most Americans from the U.S. foreign policy establishment, the UN worldview, and Europe's vacillation and cave-in. He noted also the relocating of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem reflects a determination to avoid repeated errors of past administrations, thus bolstering the U.S. posture of deterrence while complying with the U.S. law of the land and embracing the state of mind of most Americans. I can only just kind of pick and choose here, but I want to note the comments of Pastor Ron Cantor. He's a Messianic rabbi in Tel Aviv. He said, "I have heard from left-wing congressmen and congresswomen and world leaders throughout the day that this will significantly hurt the peace process." And he raises the question, what peace process? There is no such thing. The peace process is a joke, thanks to the Palestinians. The Palestinians are forming a unity government with the Hamas terrorists. How do you have a peace process with terrorists? You don't. You destroy them. You don't negotiate. There's no diplomacy. They have to be crushed. They'll not recognize Israel as a Jewish state. They teach their children to hate the Jews. They name cities, city squares, streets, and schools after terrorists who blew up innocent Jewish women and children. You can't damage something that doesn't exist. They speak if the Palestinians are on the verge of a peace with Israel. That's a joke. That's a sick, sick joke. He also notes God predicted and foreknew thousands of years ago that Jerusalem, a city no larger than a large shopping mall, would be the most controversial city in the world. I would suggest to you, in addition to this, not will it be controversial, but it will be the epicenter of God's activity on earth from now on until Messiah returns, until Jesus comes. He's saying it'll be controversial. Indeed it will. Psalm 2 speaks of the nations raging against God over Jerusalem, saying, quote, "I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain." But then he notes a passage that I think is very, very significant. It's Zechariah chapter 12. And this looks to the future with regard to Jerusalem and what God is going to do there. I want to read just a portion of Zechariah chapter 12. God speaking, Yahweh says, "Behold, I am about to make Jerusalem a cup of staggering to all the surrounding peoples. They're going to be stumbling and staggering like they're drunk. They've lost their equilibrium. The siege of Jerusalem will also be against Judah On that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples, and all who lift it will certainly hurt themselves, and all the nations of the earth will gather against it. All the nations of the earth will gather against it. Then the clans of Judah will say to themselves, the inhabitants of Jerusalem have strength, the Lord of hosts their God. On that day, when that happens, and I think that's a series of days, not only one day. On that day I will make the clans of Judah like the blazing pot in the midst of wood, like a flaming torch among sheaves. I'll make Jerusalem that, the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And they shall devour to the right and to the left all the surrounding peoples, while Jerusalem shall again be inhabited in its place in Jerusalem. It shall remain intact. And then verse 9 of chapter 12. And on that day I will seek to destroy. I will begin the process of destroying all the nations that come against Jerusalem. That's what's coming. We don't know when, but that's the future of Jerusalem and God's interaction. Jerusalem will indeed be the epicenter. And only those who take the scriptures seriously, and I mean the covenant promises made to Israel and the Jewish people, who take that seriously, and that's the Christian Zionists, only they will stand with Israel during that time. Significant days are ahead. Fasten your seatbelt. Till next week, Od Ki Yavo Shiloh, or until Messiah comes, Yivareka Yahweh. Yahweh bless you, bless those you love, and bless those who love you.